Hello, and welcome to Healthy California podcast. My name is Linda Brown, and I am the host of Healthy California, where my goal is to help educate you on your daily choices so we all can become healthy. I believe you, your family, your neighbor, and your community are all looking for better ways and simple ways to return to being healthy. Many of you have health issues or have family that's going through tough times that seemingly have no answers. It's frustrating. There are questions about health, environment, foods, exercise, and lifestyle, and it can be all overwhelming. And who do you believe? And where's the science behind it? This podcast will unravel the mystery behind being unhealthy and talk about little things that we can do in our lives to make a positive change in our health from all angles. So to be healthy, we need to have physical health, mental health, environmental health, financial and social health, and of course, spiritual health. Let's answer some of these questions to get healthy. What good is just listening to a podcast? I will give you resources as well, ways to take steps and make positive changes in your life to becoming healthy. This is a journey, not an assignment, so be kind to yourself. Okay, welcome back, California. Thank you for joining me today on Healthy California. Today we are talking about hormones, part 2. Last week we talked about men's hormones. This week we are talking about women's hormones. So let me just give you a little bit of a quick review on what hormones are. So hormones are chemicals made in our body that then travels through our blood throughout our body. There are many different types of hormones. When we think of hormones, we usually think of reproductive hormones like estrogen or testosterone or growth hormones. However, hormones they do a lot of things. They regulate energy or metabolism. We have hormones for reproduction, for growth, for mood, even to control our hunger. So hormones keep things in balance. We call that homeostasis when we're talking about that in the body. So hormones keep things in balance. Like I had mentioned, we have hormones that regulate our hunger. So like leptin makes us feel full, while ghrelin makes us feel hungry. Serotonin regulates our mood, our appetite, and our sleep. Just a quick bit of information on serotonin. 85% of serotonin is made in the GI tract. Serotonin is our happy hormone. And just a food for thought, if 85% of serotonin is made in our GI tract and it's our happy hormone, what happens when our GI tract is not healthy? Something to think about. Other hormones are like dopamine. Dopamine also influences our mood, influences our motivation. It's our pleasure hormone. So when we think of dopamine, we think of like that dopamine hit that's very addictive actually. And we get those dopamine hits like when we hear our text message ding on our phone. It sends us a little dopamine hit, and that's what gets us addicted to our cell phones. That's just an example. So that's dopamine, and that's a hormone. We have hormones that increase our red blood cell production, like EPO. EPO is erythropoietin, and endurance athletes will supplement this, and it's banned from a lot of sports because if you have more red blood cells, you have the ability to do more for longer periods of time because red blood cells carry oxygen. So those are just different types of hormones. Today we're going to be talking about different hormones, the ones that we hear about more regularly. So why is this important? Why am I even bringing this up? Well, when one hormone is off, we get medications to get that back into balance. And we do this to make our labs look better. But that's only half the picture. It's important to resolve the root cause of the problem of what's causing that hormone to be off balance. For an example, testosterone. If you are a young male and your testosterone levels are low, you can take testosterone, right? And it'll bring it back up to make your labs look better and maybe even make you feel better. However, you are not necessarily resolving the problem of why your testosterone was low to begin with. So that problem is still there. If there's a reason your hormone is low, that problem is still there. Whether you take testosterone or not, you still have that problem. So that's why it's important to figure out what's causing your hormones to be dysregulated and solve that problem and not just take pills or supplements or medication to make your labs look good. Because making your labs look good is not making you be in a good position to be healthy. It's only half the picture. So hormones can be released by glands in our body, like the brain or the pituitary gland or the heart, the liver, adipose tissue. And if you think about those parts of our body that's releasing hormones, what if that part of the body is not healthy? Like the liver, for example. If your liver releases hormones or processes hormones or degrades hormones, then what happens when your liver is not healthy? You have to be healthy throughout your whole body if you're dealing with just one thing. And hormones rarely work independently. So if one hormone is off, it's going to set off a cascade of many hormones being off. So that's why when you are talking about hormones, you have to look at the big picture. And you can't just test for one hormone and fix that one hormone, because there's a cascade of hormones that's being affected by changing just one. And that's why lab testing is really important. What are the causes and how does this affect you? So like I said, last week we talked about men's hormones. This week we're going to talk about women's hormones, and we're just going to talk about the main hormones. So we're talking about insulin, hormones that are released by the pituitary gland, which are your thyroid stimulating hormone, your prolactin, luteinizing hormone, and the follicular stimulating hormone. Talk about estrogen and growth hormone. And those are the main ones, and most of those are released by the pituitary gland up in your brain. So before we get to those ones, let's talk about insulin. I talked about insulin last week, but I'm going to mention it again because insulin is so important. We have a growing prevalence of diabetes in the country, and it just continues to grow and grow and grow. 80% of people who have diabetes don't even know they have diabetes. 80% of people who have diabetes don't know it. That's alarming to me. That means there's a lot of people out there that don't even realize it. That could be you. That could be me. So it's really important, because once you have diabetes, it sends you down a road that is much harder than needs to be. Insulin. Let's go back to insulin. Insulin is a hormone, and it controls our blood sugar. Increased insulin leads to insulin resistance, which leads to type 2 diabetes. And I say that, I think you know that already, but when we're talking about blood sugar and diabetes, we only typically check our blood sugar. Why are we not checking our insulin levels? That is so important. We have to check our insulin levels. So next time you go to the doctor, they want you to do a fasting glucose. Ask for a fasting insulin as well, because your insulin could be keeping your blood sugar at lower levels. So your blood sugar would look fine, but then your insulin levels are really high just to keep it there, right? So it's important to check your insulin levels. You don't want to have high insulin keeping your blood sugar at bay, right? So increased insulin levels also leads to metabolic disease, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, like I said, type 2 diabetes, leads to weight gain. It leads to increased inflammation, systemic inflammation, and inflammation leads to most chronic diseases. Most chronic diseases. And I'm talking about like heart disease and autoimmune disorders and hypertension and diabetes. So I'm going to repeat that. Most chronic diseases is caused by inflammation. Inflammation is something we can control, absolutely. So insulin needs to be regulated or it will lead to chronic disease and weight gain. So we need to regulate our insulin. And then increased weight leads to hormone dysregulation. And that's what we're talking about right now, is our hormones. So having increased weight can bring our hormones out of whack. So that's insulin. So now let's talk about our hormones that are released from our pituitary gland. So our pituitary gland is in our brain, way deep in our brain. It's just a small little gland, but it releases 8 different hormones. And we're only going to talk about some of them. Actually, some of the hormones that I mentioned last week were from the pituitary gland as well. So I'm not going to go through all 8 of the hormones, but we are going to go over some of the main ones. Thyroid stimulating hormone is released by the pituitary gland. Thyroid stimulating hormone, or TSH, stimulates the thyroid gland to release thyroid hormone. So the thyroid won't release a hormone, the thyroid hormone, unless it's stimulated by thyroid stimulating hormone that comes from the pituitary gland. Iodide and sodium also help this process. So your thyroid gland gets stimulated by your thyroid stimulating hormone, TSH, and then along with iodide and sodium helps to process and make thyroid hormone. And thyroid hormone is released as T3 and T4. So T3 and T4 are your thyroid hormones. T stands for thyroid, and then 3 and 4 indicates how much iodine is on that thyroid. So T4 means that there's 4 molecules of iodine, and T3 means that there's 3 molecules of iodine. So T3 and T4. So mostly thyroid hormone is made in the thyroid as T3, T4. T4 is the most that's released, and a little bit of T3. And then in the tissue, once it's out of the thyroid, in the tissue, T4 is converted to T3. T3 is the active form. T4 is not the active form of your thyroid hormone. T3 is, even though there's more T4 made. The thyroid in general, the thyroid is our metabolism regulator. So if we have a hyperthyroid, we're going to have high metabolism. If we have hypothyroid, we're going to have low metabolism. And dysfunction can be genetic or acquired, and it can be transient or permanent. So a dysfunction in your thyroid, if it can be genetic and transient, which means that you were born with it, but it can still present itself or not. It can come and go. Or it can be genetic and permanent. And that's typically what we think of when we think of like an autoimmune disorder is something, is genetic and it will be there forever. And that's not always the case. And then we have thyroid that can be acquired, like the thyroid dysfunction can be acquired. And it can be acquired transient or acquired permanent. So thyroid dysfunction that was acquired transient could mean that something affected your thyroid. It's not working properly, but it healed itself and then it's back to normal. So that's transient. It came and went. But acquired thyroid dysfunction that's permanent could be like from being exposed to a toxin and it ruined your thyroid, maybe something at work, and it ruined your thyroid, and now your thyroid, that was an acquired dysfunction, and then that's permanent. So there's different reasons. Not all autoimmune disorders are permanent and genetic. So I want you to just know that not all autoimmune disorders of the thyroid is genetic or permanent. Graves' disease is typically an overactive thyroid, while Hashimoto thyroiditis is typically a hypothyroid disorder. And those typically are genetic. But again, genetic doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to present itself all the time. You can control the symptoms on these for the most part. So let's go over hypothyroid. Hypothyroid is too little thyroid being produced. So if the thyroid is the problem, in your labs, your TSH will be high and your T3 and T4 will be low. T4 for sure. So that means if the thyroid is the problem, then your pituitary gland is still making the TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Your pituitary gland is making TSH, but it's not getting into the thyroid. And so your thyroid is not able to make thyroid hormone. It's not being stimulated to. And the brain has this feedback system where if it has too much T3, T4, then it will stop making TSH. But if your T3, T4 is not being made or being stimulated, then your brain, your pituitary, is going to keep making TSH, TSH, TSH. So that is the reason you will have a high TSH, but will have low T3 and T4. And that's if the problem is with a thyroid, in hypothyroid. But if the pituitary is the problem, then it's not making TSH. So then your labs will be low. And your T3, T4 will also be low. And that's the reason why it's important when you're testing your thyroid, you have to test everything, not just your TSH. Again, if you're just testing your TSH, which doctors do a lot of times, that's only part of the picture. So what happens if you have hypothyroid? So the symptoms in utero, which means while you're in the uterus, if you have low thyroid, it causes cretinism, which just means that everything is a short stature. In utero, low thyroid, hypothyroid causes cretinism, mental and growth disturbances, and short limbs. Things just aren't growing. If you have a chronically low thyroid in adults, hypothyroid leads to swelling of the hands and feet, delayed muscle contraction and relaxation, delayed tendon reflexes, decreased stroke volume and heart rate, decreased cardiac output, enlarged heart, slowing mental function, impaired memory, slow speech, decreased initiative, feeling cold, weight gain, and constipation. Pretty much your whole body just slows way down because your metabolism goes way down. So everything just slows way down. So that's hypothyroid. And typically we see it in people who are always complaining about cold and they have weight gain and constipation. Then you have hyperthyroid. When you have hyperthyroid, you're hyper. Everything, your metabolism is on overdrive. So hyperthyroid is too much thyroid hormone being produced. So if the problem is with the thyroid, the TSH is going to be low. Your thyroid is just producing thyroid hormone, is not necessarily being stimulated by the TSH. And so your T3, T4 is going to be high. So that's if there's something wrong with your thyroid, making too much thyroid hormone, but not necessarily from being stimulated by the TSH. With Graves' disease, which is typically a hyperthyroid, you want to check for antibodies. So you can't just say someone has low TSH and high T3, T4 and say that they have Graves. They have you want to be checked for antibodies for anti-TSH because you have antibodies that are attacking the receptors for the TSH. The TSH is not actually being able to get to that thyroid. Graves, you want to check for antibodies, anti-TSH antibodies. If the pituitary is the problem, then you're going to have high TSH and high T3, T4. So your pituitary is just pumping out TSH. The thyroid is responding to it, so everything's going to be high. Just going to be pumping it out. And if you have high TSH, high T3, T4, then your metabolism is going to be high. So symptoms of hyperthyroid may include heart palpitations, high resting heart rate, increased blood volume, increased nervousness, irritability, hyperactivity, emotional instability, tenseness, heat intolerance, weight loss, decreased menstrual flow, increased bowel movements, warm, moist skin, thinning or fine hair, excessive sweating, and excessive sweating. So with a hyperthyroid, everything is on overdrive. Everything's working 100%. That's why, like with even your bowel movements, you're going to the bathroom all the time because your digestive system is working on overdrive as well. So the thyroid also secretes calcitonin, which is a whole separate type of hormone. It has nothing to do necessarily with your metabolism, but calcitonin lowers blood calcium. And it does this by inhibiting the breakdown of bone, because your bones are always breaking down or being formed constantly. So if calcitonin lowers your blood calcium, it's going to inhibit the bone breakdown because you don't want the bone to break down just to give your blood more calcium. In addition, calcitonin helps kidneys get rid of calcium through urine. And that's important because when we check our calcium levels and they look normal, your calcium levels could be normal because you have calcitonin and parathyroid hormone constantly in check to keep your blood calcium levels normal. Your blood calcium is so finely tuned because we need calcium for muscle contraction, for our heart, and for our muscles. And if we are low in calcium or high in calcium, it's going to affect our heart muscle and the contraction of our normal skeletal muscle. So we have to keep our calcium levels very fine-tuned, and the body has a way of doing that through calcitonin and parathyroid hormone. So glucocorticoids, which is our steroid hormones released by adrenals, like cortisol, glucocorticoids inhibit thyroid-stimulating hormone. I'm going to say that again. Glucocorticoids, which is steroid hormones released by the adrenal glands, like cortisol, inhibit thyroid stimulating hormone. That means that stress inhibits your thyroid. So when you have a lot of stress, it will affect your thyroid. Something to think about. That's your thyroid and the hormones that affects your thyroid. So another hormone that's released by the pituitary gland is prolactin. Prolactin releases breast milk. Men also have prolactin. All these hormones I'm talking about, both men and women have. And we don't ever think that men need prolactin or have the ability to lactate, but they absolutely do. And it's just that men have the prolactin inhibitor hormone. So their ability to make milk is inhibited by that inhibiting hormone, and women's is not. If we're not stimulated to make milk, then we have that prolactin inhibitor that stops us from lactating. So that's prolactin. And then we have two other hormones that are released by the pituitary, and that's luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormone, so LH and FSH. They're both released by the pituitary gland in the brain, and it affects both the ovaries and the testes, and it activates them to produce sperm, to ovulate, and to regulate the menstrual cycle. So yes, both of these hormones, men have them too and need them. Without FSH for women, without FSH and LH, we can't make estrogen. In our menstrual cycle, the first 14 days of our menstrual cycle, estrogen starts to rise. When estrogen and FSH and LH surge, they all surge together, that's when we ovulate. So ovulation happens at one single point in time. It's not over days, it's one single point in time. FSH, LH, and estrogen surge, and then we ovulate. And then after that, everything goes back down. Everything goes back down except for progesterone. Progesterone increases. When I talk about estrogen, I'm talking about estriol, estradiol, and estrone. Together, all three of those are what is considered estrogen. So there's 3 different types of estrogen when we clump that together as estrogen. Progesterone and estrogen are degraded in the liver. So once we have finished with our progesterone and estrogen, it's degraded, and then we make more. And it's degraded in the liver, but estrone, which is another type of estrogen, is converted to estriol, which is another type. Remember, I said there's 3 different types of estrogen: estriol, estradiol, and estrone. Well, in the liver, the estrone is converted to estriol, which that's a good thing. But I bring this up because if progesterone and estrogen are degraded in the liver, and then there's a conversion there as well, what happens when the liver is not healthy? The liver has to be healthy for this to happen. So I want you to think about that for a second. I want to take a second to share a helpful resource with you. I have a free health questionnaire designed to pinpoint the areas in your life that you need to focus on for optimal wellness. If you're interested, simply click the link in the show notes or visit heal-throughfood.com to access it. Now let's dive back into the show. Estrogen dysregulation can be a result of stress. It can be a result of obesity. It can be a result of PCOS, polycystic ovarian syndrome. Estrogen can cause that or be a result of that. Estrogen can be high or low if you have a pituitary disorder. Pituitary, remember, is what is making your luteinizing hormone or follicle stimulating hormone. So if that is not happening, then it's not going to be able to make. Estrogen dysregulation can be caused by dysfunctional ovaries. It can be caused by lifestyle factors like smoking or lack of exercise or drinking. All that can affect your ovaries and can affect your hormones in general. Environmental toxins and plastics can also affect your hormones. So environmental toxins are hormone disruptors, and some of them are considered xenoestrogens. A xenoestrogen is something that acts like an estrogen but is not an estrogen. So if it acts like an estrogen, then the body either thinks it is estrogen, your body will act like it has too much estrogen, or it will take the place of an estrogen, and so your normal estrogen won't be able to make it to those receptors because it's being taken up by a xenoestrogen. So yeah, environmental toxins are big hormone disruptors, endocrine disruptors. And plastics is the same. Plastics are big on that list for endocrine disruptors or hormone disruptors. So we got to clean that up. We got to clean up our toxins and our plastics in our environment. So what does estrogen do? Estrogen promotes the uterine lining to grow in our uterus, right? To grow in preparation for cell implantation. So that's what happens. Our uterus, the lining grows and waiting for that cell to be implanted into the walls. And when that doesn't happen, then we shed off that layer. That's what the menstrual cycle is. Your uterine lining grows, an egg is not implanted, so then we shed it off and we go through that whole thing all over again the very next month. Estrogen also increases sensitivity to oxytocin. Oxytocin is our love hormone, and it's what bonds us together, like mother to baby. And when we fall in love, it's our love hormone. Estrogen increases the sensitivity to that. Estrogen in the ovaries promotes mitosis of the granulosa cells, which just means that the cells in your ovaries go through the division, and that is promoted by the estrogen. In the breast, estrogen stimulates the growth of connective tissue and density, especially during the first 14 days after the start of menstruation. So it makes you sensitive and dense. In the liver, estrogen decreases cholesterol and LDL and increases HDL, so that's good. In the central nervous system, estrogen is neuroprotective. That means it protects your nervous system, and what's the biggest nervous system part of our nerves is our brain. So it protects our brain. Estrogen can protect our brain. So a decline of estrogen with age is associated with cognitive decline. In the bone, estrogen promotes bone maturation. Like in young females, it will make the bones more mature, and it conserves bone mass in mature females. It's protective of our bone as well. So we want estrogen to help with bone strength. So low estrogen. Low estrogen can cause cognitive decline, like I just mentioned. Low estrogen can decrease our reaction time, and that makes sense because if it is neuroprotective and we don't have it, then the message from our brain to our body doesn't happen as fast. So our reaction time isn't as fast as it could be. So low estrogen also will cause bone loss or osteoporosis. Low estrogen will cause irregular menstrual cycles, hot flashes, night sweats, mood swings, anxiety, depression, brain fog. Low estrogen can cause vaginal dryness, decreased libido, thinning skin and thinning hair. And when I say thinning skin, not just the skin on the outside of your body, but the skin on the inside of your body as well. So you can have thinning skin on the inside of your vaginal wall, which makes sex painful sometimes. So that's the thinning skin due to low estrogen. Low estrogen can cause weight gain, especially around the abdomen. Low estrogen can cause pain and stiffness in the joints and increased risk of heart disease and insomnia. So a lot of times people that have low estrogen have a hard time sleeping. So what about high estrogen? When you have increased estrogen, it can cause irregular menstrual cycles, same thing. It can cause breast tenderness, mood swings, anxiety, depression, weight gain, especially around the hips and thighs. It can cause fatigue, headaches, migraines, decreased libido again, fibroids, thyroid dysfunction, an increased risk of breast and endometrial cancer, and increased risk of blood clots. So a lot of the same symptoms for low estrogen and high estrogen are the same, but then there's other differences as well. Like a lot of times when women have irregular menstrual cycles, it's because of fibroids, and those fibroids are caused by increased estrogen. So there's a estrogen dominance there, or something that's causing your body to have more estrogen. And then thyroid dysfunction as well. So estrogen dominance does not necessarily mean that the estrogen is high. It could mean that your progesterone is low, so the ratio is off. So there's an imbalance. And estrogen dysregulation can result from hormone therapy, obesity, stress, medications, lifestyle habits, foods, inflammation, environmental toxins again, and plastics again. So environmental toxins wreak havoc on our hormones, especially our estrogen, but all sorts of hormones and plastics as well. So that is the estrogen. And then from the pituitary, we also have growth hormone that's being released. So growth hormone, what does growth hormone do? Growth hormone released by the pituitary is responsible for bone growth, stimulates fat burning, particularly during fasting. It's responsible for muscle growth, causes high blood sugar, which causes insulin resistance. It supports protein synthesis, which helps in the healing and recovery. So we want growth hormone to help us with healing and recovery. It modulates mood and behavior because it has effects on the nervous system as well. Growth hormone counteracts insulin. Because insulin brings our blood sugar down, growth hormone actually brings our blood sugar up. People that work out a lot and are gym rats, and sometimes they'll take growth hormone to increase their muscle mass. But when they do that, again, growth hormone it's a hormone, so you mess with one hormone, you're going to mess with many hormones. Your muscle might get big, but your blood sugar will go up, your mood and behavior is going to be off. And yes, so growth hormone has benefits, but it also comes along with the risks. So what happens with the deficiency of growth hormone? As a child, if you have a deficiency in growth hormone, you're going to grow slowly. You're going to have delayed puberty. You're going to have increased fat and weak bones. If you have growth hormone deficiencies as an adult, you're going to have decreased muscle mass, low energy levels and fatigue, increased body fat, again, weak bones, and impaired metabolism that can affect your cholesterol and blood sugar. And this can result, so growth hormone deficiency can result from a brain injury or a tumor or radiation therapy, or it can be congenital. If that's the case, treatment would be to give someone growth hormones. So what happens if you have an excess of growth hormone? Well, an excess of growth hormone in a child leads to gigantism because the body just doesn't stop growing. It's a growth hormone that just doesn't stop. So that's an excess of growth hormone in children. An excess of growth hormone in adults leads to a disorder called acromegaly. And that is seen by having large hands, large feet, and large facial features. If you remember the actor from a long time ago, Andre the Giant, he had acromegaly, and I suspect that some basketball players probably do as well. Excess growth hormone in adults leads to insulin resistance, which then leads to diabetes, leads to high blood pressure, heart disease, enlarged heart, and then vision problems, and sometimes even vision loss. So that's excess growth hormone. And the causes of excess growth hormone can be a result of a pituitary tumor. Because remember, the pituitary gland is the one that secretes the growth hormone. And if it's just secreting, it's probably because your pituitary gland has a tumor in it. And so it makes too much growth hormone. Too much growth hormone can also be from supplementing too much growth hormone or medications. And you would treat it with surgery. I mean, if it's a pituitary tumor, you would treat it with surgery or medication or radiation to get rid of that tumor. All right, so what do you do about hormone dysregulation? Let's talk about what to do about all this. Well, as you know, what's the one thing I always say, I always start off with, diet and exercise. You're never going to get away with it. Even when it comes to hormones, you still have to exercise. Exercise always improves hormone regulation. All hormones, always. exercise will always be part of your regimen when it comes to healing any part of your body. Whether exercise benefits are from the benefits of the weight loss, keeping your hormones in check, or benefits of sleep, keeping your hormones in check, or improved dopamine, adrenaline, or serotonin, all that is improved by exercise. So exercise improves all hormones, always. So put it on your to-do list. You have to exercise. And then a balanced diet, a healthy, balanced diet. So same thing. A healthy, balanced diet is always going to be on your regimen of keeping your body healthy. Healthy foods help all hormones regulate, period. Healthy foods help all hormones regulate. We need healthy fats, healthy fatty fish. We need a high fiber diet, cruciferous vegetables. Flaxseed and chia are great. Fermented foods are good. Protein-rich foods help maintain muscle mass, but protein helps build in general, helps heal. Part of a healthy diet that keeps the hormones in check is no sugar, especially high fructose corn syrup. So no sugars in your diet. If and when you eat animal products, you want to make sure there are no hormones in that animal product, no pesticides, no antibiotics. And hormones get stored in your fat. So if you are eating something that has fat in it from an animal and that animal has hormones, you're eating that animal's hormones. So think about butter. Butter is fat. And if that butter came from a cow that has hormones, likely that butter is going to have hormones, and now you're going to have excess hormones. So it's really important that you choose hormone-free meat, butter, eggs, milk, cream, whatever comes from an animal, make sure it's hormone-free and pesticide-free and antibiotic-free. All that is coming into your body directly from that animal product. And then also no excess grains. If you are eating excess grains, that's going to make your blood sugar dysregulated as well. So no excess grains. And then do a liver detox at least annually. We want to make sure our liver is working always and working healthy. So I recommend you doing a liver detox. I'm doing one right now that I had advertised last month, and a group of us are doing that liver detox, and I will do it again next spring. I'll let you guys know when that happens, but always a liver detox at least annually. What else can we do for our hormones? We can sleep. We need to sleep. So poor sleep leads to an imbalance in cortisol, then blood sugar, then melatonin, estrogen, and testosterone are secreted at night. So if you're not sleeping, you're not releasing those hormones. If you're not sleeping, you're not healing, and everything gets out of balance. You need to sleep better. I have a podcast on sleep. It tells you how to have good sleep hygiene. So make sure you go back and listen to that. So you need to get good sleep. And then you need to manage stress. Some of these hormones, when I had said what caused that, a lot of it was stress. Stress appears to affect all bodily process due to increased inflammation, because stress causes inflammation in the body. And we already know, I say it over and over, inflammation is the cause of most chronic diseases, cardiovascular disease, diabetes, hypertension, autoimmune disorders. Inflammation and stress, or stress in general, is very destructive to the body. So how do you manage your stress? Breathing exercises. You can do simple breathing exercises that cost no money. 4 count of a breath in, hold it for 4 counts, let it out for 4 counts, hold that for 4 counts, and do that a few times. That is in my stress podcast, if you want to go back and listen to that, or Google it. What else can you do for stress? You can take a yoga class, you can exercise, you can do Tai Chi, you can get a massage, acupuncture, whatever body work works for you. And then you can change your schedule. If you don't have time for any of this, for anything to de-stress, if you don't have time for this, then that's the problem. You need to find something in your schedule that you can prioritize off, because if you have too much stress in your life, it's literally killing you. And then who has time for that, right? So you need to manage your stress. And then what else can we do for our hormones? We can get rid of our endocrine disruptors. So phthalates, plasticizers, we find them in lotions and creams. Phthalates is really just plastic, and they're everywhere. They're just everywhere. Like, why would you have plastic in your lotions and creams? Well, they're there. They're there in your shampoos. They're in your cosmetics. So look for phthalate-free products. Phthalate is spelled Phthalate, phthalates. So get rid of them. BPAs, bisphenols, get rid of those. BPAs are found in linings of cans, like not even just canned foods, but sodas. Anything that comes in a can it's going to be lined with a BPA lining. A receipt paper has BPA in it. So I don't take receipt paper from the store, from the gas station, I don't even take it. I always just say no receipt. And if someone hands it to me, I just say, well, you can just throw it away. I don't touch it, because once you take it, you're touching it 2 or 3 times. You're putting it in your pocket, then you're taking it out of your pocket. If you're needing your receipt to track something, you're looking at it again. And if you're not tracking it for whatever reason, then why did you take it to begin with? You don't need it. Find a way to get rid of all receipts, because that has a lot of BPA in it, and it's messing with your hormones. Plastics. Get rid of plastics, especially single-use plastics. I don't drink out of water bottles anymore. I try not to get any plastic utensils, whatever you can do to get rid of your single-use plastics. Especially avoid the ones that have the 3, the 6, and the 7 on the bottom of the container. Do not heat up your food in plastic containers in the microwave. That's a really good way of getting plastics directly into your food, is just melt it right into your food from the microwave. So try, if you can, I even want to challenge you on this. Try to get rid of your plastics. You're not going to be 100%. It's impossible to get rid of all the plastics in your life. But do what you can to get rid of what you can, because it's going to affect your hormones. What else? Endocrine disruptors. I mentioned meats, eggs, milk, hormones. They're all going to mess with your hormones if you don't get hormone-free meats and eggs and butters. And anything scented. Scented things are not really what they claim to be. Things that smell like a rose isn't really a rose. I can guarantee you that there are no roses in that rose-scented whatever spray. If you can get anything unscented, even laundry detergents, laundry sheets, all that stuff is chemically scented, and that they're all endocrine disruptors. What else can you do? Testing. If you have breast cancer in your family, or you think that you just want to get tested, you can get tested for the BRCA1 and BRCA2 gene. So that would be a good thing to do. For women, I recommend a Dutch test, DUTCH. It measures all your hormones, including testosterone and DHEA, cortisol. It's an easy urine test. Your doctor it's not going to be covered by insurance, but it is a way to get a lot of different hormones tested, including your adrenal function. And I can give the Dutch test. I have access to the lab for that. And then you can, if you're going to your doctor, make sure that you get your estrogen levels, all the three that I mentioned, your testosterone and your cortisol levels. You want to get those tested. And when you get them tested, you need to have them read by someone who is a little bit more versed in functional medicine, because the doctors will look at it and they're like, yeah, everything looks fine. But they run off of parameters that are a little bit different. The parameters of labs in a doctor's office is the parameters of the general population, and a functional nutritionist, a functional medicine doctor are going to run off parameters that are ideal, not just what's average. And then hormone replacement. So hormone replacement, if you've already been tested and you know that you are low in hormones, hormone replacement, people think that it's scary, but the benefits of adding hormones outweigh the risks. So you already heard what the risks of not having hormones. Having low estrogen is a risk. Osteoporosis and brain fog and cognitive decline, and heart disease. If you don't have estrogen, you are at risk for all that. So if your doctor still thinks that hormone replacement will increase breast cancer, then your doctor is 20 years behind in research. It astounds me that people still think, and that doctors who are supposed to be watching out for your health, they still think that hormone replacement causes breast cancer. That research is so old, I can't even believe that people are still uttering those words. So the cancer that was caused from that research was the Women's Health Initiative. That research from the Women's Health Initiative did such a disservice to women by stating that hormone replacement therapy caused breast cancer. And all those women had to suffer since then with being afraid that they were going to get breast cancer, and so in turn got osteoporosis and got brain fog and cognitive decline and heart disease that was so unnecessary. The cancer that was caused in the Women's Health Initiative was very few, and those women were taking a synthetic hormone, and a synthetic hormone that was produced by pregnant mares, horses. The estrogens that you would take now, you would take a bioidentical hormone, and that you would have to get, not from your doctor, you probably have to get it from a functional medicine doctor that can make these bioidentical hormones. They're safe. They're not synthetic. And it's the synthetic hormones that were the ones to cause breast cancer. So I just want you to think about that. Think about the benefits and the risks. So I want you to think about this for a second. If men get low in testosterone, doctors will give them testosterone to bring it back up to normal. If women get low in estrogen, doctors won't give us estrogen because of the risks. So then what does that mean for us? Did God make us imperfect? Is there a flaw in our design? I don't think so. I think God made each one of us perfect and beautiful. And I don't think there's a difference in the way we need to be treated as well, as far as men can get testosterone and women can't get estrogen because of the risks, especially if the risks aren't there. And if you have risk for breast cancer, in my show notes, there is a tool that you can go and take. It's called the Cancer Risk Tool, and you can see if you are at high risk for breast cancer. So I have that link in my show notes. You can go in and take that test and decide for yourself between you and your doctor if hormone replacement is worth the benefit and the risk. That's hormones in a nutshell. There's a lot, and I only touched on just a little bit and just tried to explain what I could in this little amount of time. If you have any questions on hormones or want to get tested, you can call me, get a hold of me through my show notes, and we can talk about your hormones, because it's absolutely important to get that taken care of. I appreciate you joining me this week, and I will talk to you guys next week. Stay healthy, California. Thank you for joining me today. I hope you learned something new. Health care and treatment should focus on being proactive and preventative, emphasizing the importance of addressing the root cause of a disease or illness. While the U.S. has an excellent trauma medicine system, helping patients when problems arise, our goals should be to prevent disease before they happen. That's why this podcast is so important to me. If you're needing further guidance or have questions on a particular matter, you can find my contact information in the show notes, where you can set up a 15-minute consultation. I also recommend you adding a functional nutritionist, a functional medicine practitioner, and a physical therapist to your healthcare team. This podcast reflects my personal opinions based on extensive research and education. It is not intended for medical diagnosis or treatment and should never replace the advice from your doctor or other healthcare professionals. To continue providing this free information, I rely on your support. Follow, subscribe, like, and share this podcast with your family and friends, or on social media. Don't forget to turn on your notifications to stay updated whenever I have a new episode released. Educating you and empowering you to take back your health is my ultimate goal. By gathering knowledge and implementing small but impactful changes, you can reclaim your well-being. This is a journey, not a quick fix, so be kind to yourself, and I'll be there to help. You got this.